Hi there, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to Reading Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. Today, we're looking at Chapter 7 of Book 10. Book 10 is the last book, and Chapter 7 is the third to last chapter of Book 10. So let's turn to it. It's on happiness. We're continuing the question of happiness. If happiness, or happiness means eudaimonia, is an activity with accord to virtue, it is reasonable that it would accord with the most excellent. Now, excellent here is not spudaios, it means the best, thing of the best, the most highest virtue, the most extreme virtue. This is why this word is, it's in the Greek, it's not, because usually arete means excellent, but Bartlett translates it continually as arete. Excellent has been used at certain times with spudaios, rather serious, but it's not spudaios virtue here. It is the most highest extreme virtue, literally the best virtue in that sense, right? And it would be, again, and this would be the virtue belonging to what is best. So there's kind of a begging, the first sentence kind of ends in a weird question of what is best. It leads us to the thought of, well, this is supposed to be a virtue, right? It is an happiness and virtue. It is reasonable that it would accord with the most, what kind of virtue? The most highest virtue, the most perfect virtue, the best. What is best, right? So whether this is the intellect, nous, so whether this virtue is that of the intellect, of nous, of mind, or something else that would naturally something else that seems naturally to rule, that has authority, has authority, kairos, to rule, to command, and to possess intelligence, nous, concerning what is noble and divine, noble, kalos, the kalos, and the holy, divine. Whether it itself is in fact divine, or the most divine thing in us, the holy. In other words, this virtue is what, in other words, it is able to possess intelligence concerning what is noble and divine. Whether it itself is in fact divine, holy, or the most divine thing in us, or is it really the divine thing in us, or the highest of the divine thing in us? The activity of this, in accord with the virtue proper to it, would be complete happiness. So we get a kind of a weird specific definition that this idea, that it deals with what is best, what is the highest, and it deals with either it is something that the intellect, the ability to know, or something that has the ruling to something else that seems to naturally to rule, to command, and to possess intelligence, nous, concerning what is noble. So it is the mind itself, the intellect, that knows this, or something that acts, that allows, that rules over things, the body, the person, the actor, and one of the to rule, command, and possess intellect, nous, concerning what is noble, kalos, that means noble, beautiful, the noble, the good, the kalos, and the divine. And whether it's a clause, whether it itself divine, that this happiness itself is divine, or the most divine thing in us. The activity of this, so the activity of that activity that leads to happiness, that leads to that state, the condition of happiness, in accord with the virtue proper to it. So therefore, the activity that produces this condition of happiness, and the virtue proper to that activity. This would be complete happiness in that sense. In that sense, and that this activity is contemplated. Now, this has been stated. In other words, the argument is contemplative, the contemplative, the theory and theory. There's that this is to contemplate. This is going to be the one. This makes the argument. Here's the argument. Here we have the argument for the contemplative virtue being the supreme virtue. Okay. This would also seem to be in agreement both with the points made before and with the truth. So in other words, the argument before, that's in book one, back all the way back in book one, about the question of what happiness was and what it was, the purpose of this, which way of life is it? Is it the life of the mind? Is it the life of honor, political life, or is it life of pleasure? And we asserted the first time it was the life of the mind, right? And with the truth. So therefore, what is true? This is, here's another example of why this is a pain in the ass. This is excellent, most of it. For this activity is most excellent one, semicolon. 26, note, perhaps strongest, most powerful as critites. Right? This is why I would even argue the note should have been earlier. I don't think it's the same word, but he throws excellent around more than he should in that sense. For this activity is the strongest one, or the most powerful, because cratitis, right? The intellect, nous, is the most highest thing, serious thing to us. Now, is this Buddhios? I have to always check. This is where I always have to go like, is this Buddhios? Is he really saying Buddhios here? Or no, 20. I broke my glasses and got super glue finally to fix it. Ooh. I don't see Spudios here. See, again, this is why I think he is again doing that. This is why I wish to God maybe he would be consistent, using certain words more consistently here. In other words, the nous is the most highest thing, excellent of things in us. It is like the better thing, the best things in us, the highest, the most powerful things in us. And the things with which the intellect, nous, is concerned are the most excellent, the most highest of things, what can be known. So these are the that's why I don't think it's Spoudios. It is best. It is tied not to the best Aristos, but it's tied more to it is tied most to the, in fact, okay, this is why I'm frustrated about when I look at the text. It is concerned with the most excellent thing known in that sense. Let's go look at another translation, just so that we don't go completely Baba here. Okay. For this is the highest kind of activity, since intelligent too is the highest, not the best, highest, yes, of things in us. And the object of intelligence is the highest noble. So it's like supreme highest. Again, I think this is why I think strongest at earlier one, highest in that sense, highest of things. See, this is the translation choices. Further, this activity is the most contentious. So it's not only the highest, but it's also the most, oh, it's not contentious. Continuous, sorry, not contentious, continuous. Okay, oops, that's a misread. For this is the most continuous, for we are more able to contemplate continuously than we are to do anything else, whatever. So in other words, it's something that you can go on and on. Contemplation is, in other words, he's defending contemplation on its ability to be done forever, continually to a thing than other activities. Other activities require rest. Other human actions and activities would require rest. Contemplation does not require that much rest, and maybe it does, but not as much as the other activities, right? So this is the most continuous. We're more able to contemplate continuously than we are to do anything else, whatever. We also suppose that pleasure must be mixed into happiness, and the most pleasant of the activities in accord with virtue is agreed to be the one that pertains to wisdom, spudaios. Not spudaios, but sophos, Sophia, wisdom. So it's wisdom. In other words, the activities, the virtue is agreed to be the one that pertains to wisdom. So it's but notice not that it is. We also suppose that pleasure must be mixed into happiness, and that the most pleasant of activities in accord with virtue is agreed. It's agreed. This is opinion. We agree. This is opinion. This is speculation. To be the one that pertains to wisdom. At any rate, philosophy seems to have pleasures that are wondrous in purity and stability, and that it is reasonable that those who are knowers conduct their lives with greater pleasure than those who are seeking knowledge, with pleasure than those. In other words, reasonable that those who are knowers conduct their lives. 27 is okay. Diagogue. This is why diagogue again in note 22 above. We go all the way to note 22. This phrase attempts to capture the meaning of a single word, hence, literally, in a sense, is diagogue, carrying through. Literal meaning is to carry through one way of life in that sense. So this is diagogue also. 27 here is knowers conduct their lives. They're passing through. That those who are knowers pass their lives, conduct their lives with greater pleasure. Pass through, living, pass through things with greater pleasure than those who are seeking knowledge. So therefore, interesting. But isn't a philosopher one who is not the knower, but one who seeks? Philosophy seems to have pleasures that are wondrous in purity and stability. Okay, that's one thing. But remember, philosophy in the Socratic sense is not being wise, but seeking wisdom, right? So therefore, it's a weird, interesting point that here is the one that pertains to wisdom. Okay, seeking it up here, purity and stability, that wondrous in purity and stability, and it's reasonable that those who are knowers pass their lives with greater pleasure than. Wait a minute. This would seek to contradict the knower, the one who has wisdom, the knower of what is more happy, more pleasant. In other words, those has greater pleasure than the one who are seeking knowledge, the ones who are just, in other words, the seeking knowledge. The question is the one seeking knowledge engaging philosophy? So the question here is seeking knowledge and philosophizing the same thing or similar things? Because remember, philosophy is not being wise. It's seeking after wisdom, pursuing, trying to get wisdom. Okay. So that's interesting. The self-sufficient person, the self-sufficient spoken of, the self-sufficiencies, not sufficient, the self-sufficiency spoken of would pertain especially to the contemplative life. So the contemplative life seems to be completely self-sufficient. the self-sufficient spoken life needs nothing else. But the contemplative life doesn't need anything else. You can by yourself think about things, and you don't need anything else. So there is in the contemplative life a greater self-sufficiency than other lives, right? For a wise person, another wise person, a just person, and all the others are in need of the necessities of life. For a wise person, a just person, and all the others are still in need of necessity of life. But when these necessities have been supplied sufficiently, the just person needs others towards whom and with whom he will act justly. And similarly with the moderate person, the sophosunos, okay, the moderate person, sophosunos, the courageous, right, and each of the rest. Yeah, see, the virtues of the mind only need you. The contemplative, the contemplative, the theoretic virtue, the theoria to contemplate. This doesn't need to have others. The other virtues require others. So as long as you have all virtues require the necessities of life, the things that make life possible. But once that, you don't need anything else. So it's not that we are completely autonomous and self-sufficient. We still need the necessary things of life. The self-sufficient person is not the person who doesn't need the necessities. They have to have the necessities. So given the normal necessities of life, possessing of those, the self-sufficient, that is the self-sufficient purpose that needs nothing else. The argument goes that the contemplative person needs no other person in that sense. But the other one, the wise, the sophosunos, or the moderate, he says, or the courageous, or the other virtues, need others. But when these necessities have been supplied sufficiently, right? He says there, right? This is that thing. The wise person, by contrast, is capable of contemplating even when by himself. So the sophos, the wise person, the sophos, the wise man, by contrast, is capable of contemplating even when by himself. And if he's wiser, and the wiser he is, the more capable of doing so he will be. So, in other words, he doesn't need anyone else. He can the more wise the wise is simply, but the more wise, the more able. He doesn't need others. He can do more. He can contemplate by himself. He doesn't need others to this. In other words, by contrast, the wise person is capable of contemplating even when by himself, and the wiser he is, the more capable he is to this. And through though it is perhaps better to have those with whom he may work, nonetheless, he is the most self-sufficient. In other words, the intellect, this wise person is completely self-sufficient. The question then is anyone really wise? This supposes that wisdom, the one who possesses wisdom, is doesn't need any. He is capable. He doesn't need others in that sense to contemplate. He can, and this is the highest. This is the happiness. He doesn't need anyone else. The one who possesses wisdom doesn't need anyone else in this sense. He is therefore self-sufficient in this radical sense. This argument for the intellectual to possess it. But the problem with the idea of this is that the Socratic says, wait a minute, but philosophy is not having wisdom; it's seeking it, and that only the God is wise. That's Socratic position. Only the God is wise. So he is not talking about a human being here. He's talking about a God in this sense. Or something godlike, something no longer human in that sense. The wise person, by contrast, is capable of contemplating even when by himself. And the wiser he is, the more capable of doing so. And though it is perhaps better to have those with whom he may work, right? It's it's greater preference, but he doesn't need it. But God doesn't need anyone else. It would be good. It would be better if he has other people, but no, doesn't need better. He is nonetheless the most self-sufficient. In addition, contemplation alone would seem to be cherished for its own sake, for nothing comes from being from it apart from contemplating itself. So therefore, in other words, contemplation, it seems to be only for the sake of contemplation in that sense. It doesn't bring anything else in that sense. But from matters bound up with action, we gain something to a greater or lesser degree, apart from action itself. So in other words, from thought, we get thought itself. We get thought. We get this act of thinking it. We get this contemplation. We contemplate, we get ideas, and this, it doesn't produce anything other than ideas, produce the other thought in that sense. But in action, with the things that bound up with action, that it produces something apart from action itself, something outcomes out of action. Happiness, moreover, is held to reside in leisure. This term skule, Greek word school, right? We constantly translate the Greek word skole, from which derived the term school, right? Where one goes to when free from necessity of work. Regards in leisure. For we are occupied or we are without leisure. A skule. This is a skule. Without skule. This is skule and a skule. We're without leisure. So that we may be at leisure, and we wage war so that we may be at peace. In other words, sometimes people get without leisure, with a skule, but for the sake, but the purpose of the a skule is to achieve skule. Like we wage war, but we don't wage war for war's sakes. We wage war for peace. So this is why that the idea is happiness, moreover, is held to reside with leisure. The activities of the virtues bound up with action, then, consist in matters of either politics or war, and the actions concerned with these seem to be without leisure. In other words, the virtues that are bound up with actions, the activities of the virtue bound up with actions, consists in matter what of politics or war, and the actions concerned with these are what concerned are without leisure, require work in that sense, right? Whereas the contemplative life is pure leisure in that sense. He makes an argument against you can't be the political life because that doesn't allow you to have leisure. There's no leisure in political life or war. And war and political life is for the sake of the good life. Okay, it's not for its own sake. It's for the sake of achieving the good life, happiness. It's not an end in itself. It's the means to an end. Where contemplation seems to be able to be for its own end. And the actions concerning with these stem to be without leisure. This is altogether the case with warlike actions. Nobody chooses to wage war or even prepares for war for the sake of waging war. Such a person would seem to be altogether bloodthirsty if he should make enemies of his friends, so that battles and slaughter may arise. In other words, this is the thing. Anyone who wants to wage war for war's sake, this is not natural. War is done for the sake of peace, victory, and victory is production of peace, not waging war to conflict for conflict's sake. This would be a monster, bloodthirsty. Such the activity of the politician, the politicos, the statesman, I would say, but the politician too, is without leisure. Quite apart from the politician engaging as a fellow citizen in political life. No, quite apart from the politicians engaging as a fellow citizen in political life, his activity looks to gain position of authority, ruling, or gain and political office, or at any rate to gain the happiness of the politician himself. to gain the happiness of the politician himself and of his fellow citizens, which is something other than the political activity, and which we clearly seek out on the grounds that this happiness is something other than that activity. In other words, that we try to. In other words, the political activity is the thing that gets us things. Sometimes it's, but also, but in order to engage in political activity, sometimes we have to get office. We have to do things, right? We have to engage the fellow citizens in political life. Apart from the mere that activity, his activity looks towards gaining positions of authority and political office, or at any rate to gain the happiness of the polity. I want to do something that I can be happy, that I can not only happy for me, but also happy to get the community I live in, my fellow citizens, happy, which is something other than the political activity, and which we clearly seek out on the grounds that this happiness is something other than that activity. So wait a minute. The political activity is not the thing that gives the happiness towards the whole community, or the happiness itself. So this is a complex sentence, complex thought here. But the activity politic is too without leisure, right? He says that, right? Quite apart from this politics gauging as a fellow citizen of political life, his activity looks to gain positions of authority and office, or at any rate to gain happiness for the politician himself and of his fellow citizens, which is something other than the political activity. So these things are separate from, it's something different than the political activity. In other words, the seeking of office, the seeking of trying to get something, which we clearly seek out on the grounds that this happiness is something other than that activity. So the happiness that they seek to get is different from political. It's not politics in itself. This happiness that we seek for themselves, and that is not the political. The political is the means to get those goods. So if among the virtuous actions, the political and warlike ones are preeminent in nobility, kalos, nobility, beautiful, beauty, could be, in nobility or beauty and greatness, they are nonetheless without leisure and aim at some end. That is, they are not choice-worthy for their own sake, whereas the activity of the intellect, because it is contemplation, seems to be, now 30 here is to differ. This is that weird word problem, right? This is no, seem to be superior, or to differ in seriousness, superior in seriousness, or differ in seriousness, to aim at no end apart from itself, and to have a pleasure proper to it. And this pleasure helps increase the activity, and that what such that what is self-sufficient, characterized by leisure and not subject to weariness to the extent possible for human being, and all else that falls to the lot of the blessed person, manifestly accord with this contemplative activity. If all this is so, it's done as a question. It's not. This is all. If all this is so, then this activity would constitute the complete happiness of a human being. So it's not. He's giving us. This is an argument for this argument. But the political activity, the argument of politics, is that it's a school A one. Political activity also does it, and what it achieves is not politics or war. Doesn't aim at itself; it aims at something other than itself. Where thought and contemplation aims at itself, and the more you do it, the more happy you are, the more pleasure you get, the more joy and contemplation you get, more self-sufficiency you get, right? Provided that it goes together with a complete span of life, for there's nothing incomplete in it that in what belongs to happiness. So therefore, this contemplation, as long as it's tied to a complete way of life, complete span of life, provided that goes together with a complete span of life, for there's nothing incomplete that belongs to happiness. So therefore, okay, you can't just deal with that It has to be the blessed in that sense. So therefore, this idea that the whole way of life, this is the argument for contemplation. But a life of this sort would exceed what is human. It's dialogue. So this, we get this, all of a sudden we have this whole argument for contemplation, it's like this, but here comes the objection. But a life of this sort would exceed what is human. For it is not insofar that he is a human being that a person will live in this way, but insofar as there is something divine present in him. So it's, in other words, there's something divine and present in him. That it's not that he, as a human being, but something other than being human, is divine is present in him. And this divine thing is far superior to the composite thing, as its activity is superior to the activity that accords with the other virtues, right? That is moral virtues, the moral virtues, right? And that appears, that phrase appears again in the first sentence of Book 10, Chapter 8, right? So there was the divine thing is as far superior of composite things as its activity is superior to the activity that accords with other virtues. If the intellect, nous, is something divine in comparison to the human being, the life according with this intellect would also be divine in comparison to human life. So wait a minute. But one ought not, as some recommend, to think only about human things because one is a human being, nor only about mortal things because one is mortal, but rather to make oneself immortal insofar as is possible, and to do all that bears on living in accord with what is the most excellent of the thing itself. So this is another argument. So all of a sudden we get the argument is that, well, wait a minute, this is not human, right? This is not something that is human. But now we have another argument. Oh, yes, it's not human, but we should strive for not merely what is human, but what is greater than human. Greatness, right? The idea that we're something more than human. And something that is not, we are mortal, but we should strive for the immortal, right? In other words, not only about mortal things, but because one is mortal, but rather to make oneself immortal, insofar it is possible to do all that bears on living in accord with what is the most excellent of things in oneself, the highest of things, the best of things in oneself, right? In other words, you want to make yourself the best possible. This is making yourself as best as possible is to make yourself immortal in that sense, kind of divine-like, immortal. Turn yourself into a god in that sense. For although that most excellent thing, or the highest thing, or the greatest thing, is small in bulk, in point of its capacity and the honor due it, it prevails by far over everything. So this actual excellence, this thing that drives us, this most excellent, the best thing, this best or highest thing, in terms of bulk, it's small. But in point of its capacity and the honor due to it, prevails everything else. And it would seem that each person even is this thing. So this thing itself, the thing that is this most excellent thing, that drives this thing, this excellent thing that's small in bulk, that points to capacity, that is the point of capacity and honor due it. It's better than everything. That this, it seems that each person even is this thing. If in fact it is what is ruling or authoritative and better than him. In other words, if this thing that drives us, this thing, this holy thing, this higher thing that makes us, that drives us, that this thing is ruling, what is authoritative and better than him. It would be strange then if a person should not choose the life that is his own, but rather that of something else. In other words, this is the thing that makes you. That this quality is yours. It's specifically yours. It is specifically you, and therefore it is make you better. What is ruling in you and better, the highest, no best in you, and that this is what it is. Strange then if a person would not choose the life that is his own or her own, but rather that of something else. It's that other. No. What is said before fits well now too. In other words, what was been said before now fits well too. And I think this is Colosse. I think it is Colosse. I have to always be careful. This is what I don't like because maybe. No, Mac Aristotle. Snow Colosse. Wow. But what is said before fits now too. For what is proper to each for what is proper to each is by nature, the highest, the most excellent, and the most pleasant for each. Right? The highest and the best, the most excellent, right? And the most present for each. And so for a human being, this is the life that accords with the intellect, right? The mind in that sense, thinking, the mind, intellect. If in fact this is especially is a human being, that this ruling part, that is mindful part, that aims to the best, that motivates everything else. This therefore each human for so for a human being, this life that accords with the intellect, the mind. If in fact this especially is a human being, this life therefore is also happiness. So we get the three. We get the argument one that it's that, but then the argument this is something not human. But then the argument, well, may not be human, but it points to the highest things, and it's that which defines man as man. It is that part of man that defines what man is. And therefore, this is how this chapter ends. So if you have any comments or questions, please put it below. I'll respond to them and answer them when I see them. If you like the video, hit the like button. Please hit the like button. It helps the algorithm out there. If you've not subscribed, please subscribe. Encourage others to subscribe. If you like the video, please share it on social media and share it about. Bring it to other people's attention. Bring the channel to other people's attention. Encourage them to come watch us and check out not only this, our finishing up of the ethics, but also of the whole things. Go watch the whole ethics series from the get-go, from the start, and then go check out the other playlists we have on different books, the topics we cover. If you didn't like it, you can say thumbs down, but say why in the comments. That way we can improve. People can see what's wrong and what was not right. If you want to, you can check me out. My social media links out there to check me out on the social media. If you want to know more about me as a scholar, check out my research, check out my things like that. You can go check the academic social media links below the social media links. And if you want to help me to do what I do financially in that sense, you can do so by Patreon on our Subscribestar. The links are below. The URLs are below. Or you can simply do so. Want to help in other ways, you can go buy one of my books. The books are listed kind of below, and that you can go to your local bookstore or online bookseller like Amazon or Barnes & Noble or whatever, or you can go directly to the publishers to get the books. And those are the ways you can help. We'll see you. We look at the penultimate chapter next time, chapter 8. Take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.